I'm left-handed, so I'm holding the tennis racket with my wrist here. So I have it in my elbow right now. And then I have, it's on my left side, my whole left side. Muscular strain. I once saw a Boston yesterday. Okay, so most important about pain. Most important. You guys, as the nurses, are going to be charged with making sure your patient's pain is at a minimum. Do not forget that that is a vital sign. That's the fifth vital sign. You have different types of pain and where they originate. That superficial pain is like a paper cut. Does everybody have a paper cut? You know, that just really hurts, doesn't it? It's intense that short period of time. They have what they call visceral pain. Visceral pain's a lot deeper. Visceral pain is associated with a lot of organ cancers. Visceral pain. Then you have this deep somatic pain, and that talks about this tendon, blood vessels, and bones. You see that we can have different injuries, and they can result like severe. Everybody's probably sprung their ankle before, right? Pulled ligaments. Anybody ever done that? Those kinds of injuries. That's just, it hurts, and it just hurts for a good while. And we hear about radiating pain. Those people that have a history of gastric reflux, who has that? Or if you have maybe family members, how it radiates out through this heartburn. Then, of course, you have what they know in term as referred pain. And referred pain is typically an example associated like for MI, where it's, my jaw's hurting. My left arm, I feel this pain down my left arm, but what really is transpiring here is they're in the throes of having an acute MI. Phantom pain, and that is one that you typically associate with those that have amputations. I'm sure there's a lot of research going on right now with the military, with as much injuries that we have had of recent, in the past 10 to 12 years with these Middle East wars. And then you have what they know or call psychogenic pain, and that's pain that rises from the mind. Mind's powerful, isn't it? Mind's very powerful. But it can be just as crippling. Causes of pain, you have essentially two types. You have this nociceptive, which that's what that we typically are commonly familiar with. You guys probably had a certain amount of this in your A&P. They probably talked about something in terms of how the systems work and associate with pain, nociceptive system. And then you have that, what they call neuropathic. Nociceptive occurs with stimulus. In other words, it's an intense stimulus. You put your hand on a hot plate. Nociceptive, it's immediate, right? Acid. You fall. Two different types of nociceptive is the visceral and somatic. Then you have the neuropathic type of pain. That's one that could be more associated with conditions such as stroke or amputation. Things that occur as it's related to our nervous system. Shingles is a good example. You've heard of your, maybe some of your grandparents having a case of shingles and it goes along nerve lines. That's a good example. We have types of durations. We have acute pain, and typically we associate acute pain may last up to 6 months. you frequently see this with some sort of acute injury or surgery. This is a good example, and I actually can describe myself here. Acute pain, right lower quadrant. I was nauseated. I had rebound tenderness. I was 6 weeks before delivery. I thought I was having the baby. Unbeknownst to me, I was having appendicitis. That's what was happening to me. Very serious condition. New mom, first time mom. He threw me in the wheelchair because I didn't. I said, well, this must be what it's like to go into labor. It was 6 weeks before to do that. Got to the ER, they threw me in that wheelchair, sent me upstairs to the labor delivery room because they just knew for a fact. They checked me, but you got the vital signs that signify something is going on in your system. So they do a sonogram, and it's a very diffuse gas pattern because you got so much baby there, but then when you've got a situation of bowel, and see that fits so nicely in the previous discussion. So they did exploratory surgery, cut me. So of course, I ended up developing a wound infection. Lasts a little bit longer, so I ended up getting scar tissue for that. But yeah, that's an interesting scenario when you're 6 weeks from delivery and develop appendicitis. That's cute, cute. Because I'd worked the night before, I actually done a 7-3. I was a LVN. No, I was actually RN. I had graduated from my RN school. I was transversing from an LVN to an RN role. And I worked the 7-3 shift the night before, or the day before, and then they were short, so I came back in and worked 11 to 7 because I was coming in days off. You work 7 days sometimes. And then that next morning, I go home, go to bed, I wake up at 10:30 with excruciating pain. Painful. Then you have what they term chronic pain. That's 6 months longer than 6 months. It actually interferes with your activities of daily living. It's crippling. It's so crippling that it can cause them personal life problems. It can cause them situations where they can affect their job. It's very depressing. These individuals might have show evidence of depression because it's such a chronicity of the pain. You can imagine if you had it for years, what would occur.
Pain is a daily reality for millions of people, yet its mechanics are not well understood. McGill has historically been a world leader in pain research. The university has assembled an all-star team of investigators who aim to continue leading in this field and bring relief to pain sufferers.
You cry from pain, but you cry from the depression that comes with it. I find that my pain, at least, it changed my personality. I was always very outgoing, a very social person, and it hollows you out to a point where you no longer feel like yourself. And in fact, you become so depressed, or at least I did, that you don't really even care anymore. You just sort of lie there and take it.
Steve Munsey lives with chronic pain. At least he's learning to.
And that's where I was when I came here. I was a mess because I was all ready to give up.
I can't tell you how many people have come in here and have been told that the pain is all in your head. You just have to, you know, get on with your life and get over it.
Dr. Mark Ware is a McGill-based family physician, researcher, and world-renowned expert on pain.
Typically, the treatments that they've tried and that have been used prior to coming here have not been working or have not been working well. So they come to us as a kind of last stage attempt to try to get some management of the pain. And typically a patient will say as they come in the door, "You're my last hope, doc."
Migraine, back pain, arthritis, fibromyalgia, the list goes on. Over 50% of Canadians will suffer from some form of chronic pain during their lifetime, and only half will describe their pain as controlled.
I've been suffering from kidney stones since I was about 17, but they were very sporadic. I'm now 45. In the last probably better part of 5 years, it's relentless, to a point where I'm no longer working. It's changed my life.
Chronic pain is expensive. In terms of lost productivity and treatment, it costs Canadians between $10 and $15 billion annually.
Chronic pain is a disease by itself, and many times we cannot cure it. So we're trying at least to diminish or to decrease the suffering as much as possible, and to try and make their life a little bit more bearable.
Dr. Yoram Shear is director of the MUHC Pain Center and a prominent figure in the world of pain for more than 2 decades. He says patients and healthcare workers must understand that pain should be treated early and aggressively.
We know that the longer we wait, the lower the chances we'll be able to cure them. And here we know that every day counts.
Very cool.
Yoram Shear is Steve Muncie's physician.
It's almost gone.
Yeah.
Okay. You hear the same thing?
Just started.
Physicians, nurses, physiotherapists, psychologists, and other specialists look at the whole person to find strategies to help them deal with chronic pain. And what they learn from their patients contributes to the extensive pain research underway at McGill University.
So there's a translation, if you will, from the clinic to the basic science community. They work and spend their entire lives and careers trying to identify new strategies to treat pain at the bench level. And then it translates back to the clinic, where I will sit with my patient and explain why I think these treatments are necessary.
McGill University is recognized as a world leader in pain research. In 1965, McGill psychology professor Ronald Melzack co-authored the highly influential paper, The Gate Control Theory of Pain, described as the most influential paper ever written in the field. Until the late 1980s, pain research focused exclusively on the spinal cord. Melzack insisted research was looking in the wrong place. The theory that pain results from a message being relayed from the source of pain up the spinal cord did not explain phenomenon like phantom pain, where patients can still feel pain from body parts that are no longer there.
So we have to recognize that there's a subjective sensation or feeling, perception of pain that is completely different from the physical things that are going on. So how does that happen? And that's where I came in.
Melzack pursued his investigation of the brain's role in pain processing. In the 1970s, he developed the McGill Pain Questionnaire, the tool used today worldwide to assess a patient's pain.
It's very important to look at this sort of thing because it gives you a clue as to how the neural mechanisms in your brain are working, but where in the brain they are working. But there's another thing, and that is it will tell you you can use it to look at the effectiveness of a drug or any other kind of procedure to stop a pain.
Thanks to Ronald Melzack's groundbreaking research, we know today that pain has physical as well as environmental and psychological dimensions. And pain is subjective and highly variable. If 100 people sustain the same injury or undergo the same operation, most will recover, but a certain number, maybe 5 of the 100, will develop chronic pain.
We know that that variability is partially genetic and partially environmental, so a full explanation of the variability is going to require identification of the relevant genes and identification of relevant environmental factors, and then some study about the interaction between the genes and the environment.
Jeffrey Mogul succeeded Ronald Melzack as the E.P. Taylor Professor of Pain Studies at McGill. He is recognized as a world leader in pain genetics.
The problem is that we know very few of the relevant genes, a handful at most, and even then we're not quite sure of. The environmental factors that may matter, again, maybe 3 or 4 of them have been identified, but we're not quite sure. We're in very, very early stages of figuring this out. The good news is that finally we have all the tools available to find the genes.
Mogul suspects there may be some 300 genes involved in pain processing and any number of environmental factors. His search for the factors involved in variable pain processing has led to some fascinating results, notably that male and female brains use completely different genes and different proteins to process pain.
And this is amazing because it suggests that there's, a male circuit going this way and a female circuit going that way. And of course what that predicts is that one day you might be able to develop an analgesic, a pain-killing drug, that actually worked in one sex and simply didn't work in the other.
In yet another highly cited experiment on the role of environment, Mogul discovered that mice can exhibit empathy toward fellow mice who are experiencing pain.
If these 2 mice are both in pain, and if they know each other, that is, if they're cage mates taken from the same cage, so they live together, pain behavior, pain sensitivity in both of these mice will be higher than if you tested them alone. And you don't see that effect if only one mouse is injected, if only one mouse is in pain. You don't see that effect if these 2 mice are both in pain, but they're strangers. The only thing that does it is if they're both in pain and they know each other.
Mogul brought his empathy findings to McGill colleague Kathy Bushnell, among the very first in the world to use brain imaging to study pain. Bushnell did similar empathy pain tests involving humans.
And if we can get the cerebellum in the picture, that would be great too. We tested their pain when they were in the either a high or low empathetic state, and the people who were feeling empathy had more pain than the ones that weren't.
Kathy Bushnell and others have changed everything by simply giving us these marvelous pictures and showing us that when a person is in pain, a whole bunch of areas light up, not just one area, a bunch of them, and in a very meaningful way.
We do manipulations such as the empathy manipulation, or we do change manipulations to change a person's emotional state and put them in a good mood or a bad mood, so we can look at how mood state affects pain, attention. We can do things where we distract them. So we do this, and we do the what we call psychophysical testing, so we can see how the manipulations affect their perception and what they say about their pain.
By using MRI scans to see the human brain in the act of processing pain, Bushnell has graphically shown concepts like the power of suggestion and distraction in moderating a patient's sensation of pain, information that can empower patients.
If you see a brain image that says, okay, this is what your brain looks like when you're focusing on your pain, this is what your brain looks like when you're distracted from your pain, and you see this huge difference, as a patient, you're much more willing then to engage in activities and try to learn how to best cope. This doesn't get rid of the pain, but it's a way of helping people cope with their pain by using what circuitry is in the brain that they can engage through their activities and their thoughts.
Bushnell's brain imaging studies have resulted in some startling findings that chronic pain actually prematurely ages the brain. She and colleague Petra Schweinhardt conduct extensive human studies aimed at understanding how we experience pain.
On the left-hand side there, the bar's going down. That means the thermostat actually gets cooler and cooler. So she was instructing the subject to press the button as soon as she feels a change in sensation from neutral temperature to cool temperature. And that is actually something that tells us something about the functioning of nerve fibers, for example.
The cold water test is used to measure a person's own internal pain inhibition system, a system often impaired in people who suffer from chronic pain.
You know that pain inhibits pain. So one painful stimulus, and that was this ice-cold water, which is really, really painful, is able to inhibit the subsequent perception of another painful stimulus.
The Allen Edwards Center for Research on Pain, based at McGill, is funded by the Louise and Allen Edwards Foundation. The center brings together world-class experts in genetics, cell biology, pharmacology, brain imaging, and frontline pain clinicians, 160 researchers in all, dedicated to finding cures for chronic pain.
We can objectively demonstrate that we have not only probably the largest concentration of pain researchers in the world, but also that we cover the entire spectrum of research.
Fernando Cervero, director of the Allen Edwards Center for Research on Pain, is the world leader on visceral pain mechanisms. His lab is analyzing the cellular and molecular mechanisms of pain.
This is electricity. This is nerve cells and neurons communicate with each other with electrical signals, and we have internal electricity. And they produce these pulses of electricity, which are collapsing potentials, which are there. And then the number of them indicates how intense the signal is. So the more of them that are produced, the more intense the signal is. And that gives us an idea in neurons that signal pain, or pain pathways, how intense that sensation may happen in a human being. So I'm quite optimistic that within the next perhaps 10 or 15 years, we will make a significant contribution to reduce pain throughout the world.
We have the best group of pain researchers in the world.
I'm reminded of this every time I go to a meeting, that McGill is regarded as one of the top 1 or 2 institutes, collections of pain researchers in the world.
With each clinical encounter, we are reminded of the size of the problem of pain and how deeply it affects people. We take that message back to our science colleagues and say, listen, this is a pain problem we have to fix.
My mindset is obviously improved, as has my quality of life, for sure.
I cannot think of any other single place in the world that has done as much to promote the idea that pain is a very important thing to look at, and has really produced an understanding of the mechanisms that produce pain.
The father of modern pain research says he is proud of the leadership role that McGill has played in unraveling the mysteries of human pain processing.
Very gratifying. Good one.
I think we can stop there, but y'all get the gist. There's a lot of research goes on. And even here in San Antonio, you guys see in the last 10 years these, how some of these pain control centers have popped up, right? Yeah, I think there's one near the quarry or near somewhere close to the quarry. So that's another field, see, as an RN, you could get into that field of research or just working in those kinds of centers because, there's a lot of Americans in pain, chronic pain. We all need some help here, right? Okay, so intractable pain, that's chronic highly resistant to relief. And those would be the individuals that this kind of center would be focused in on, and they would use a variety of methods, which they did actually mention that, which was good about the distraction, the importance of distraction. You yourselves, how many people's gone to a dentist? My dentist has, if you lay flat, they have the images on the ceiling to help you relax, think of something different, right? Typically, going to the dentist may not be a pleasant thing. It usually invokes the image of pain, but maybe some distractors. These are some of the verbiage, some of the words that we may use or we may ask our patients to describe the sensation. What is the feeling? What kind of verbiage does that pain evoke? So these are some of the ones that you typically see used. So what happens when someone has pain? They have those pain-sensitive nociceptors. That's where in the skin, within the skin, that's where you find the majority of the nociceptors. And interesting enough, those internal organs, they have the least amount of, so doesn't it make sense? Here's our barrier, our first defense, line of defense, and it would totally make sense. We touch the hot plate, instant. So you have that instant feeling of pain. We're trying to protect our body, right? Within the the system, as we know with the pain sensations, we have these substances that are released. Bradykinin, these are chemical substances within our body. Bradykinin, histamines, and prostaglandins. Prostaglandins actually is that chemical that gives us that initiation of PERS, that feeling of PERS. And bradykinin and histamines, they produce this vasodilation type of effect. It produces that inflammational effect, and actually that's where we start stemming that painful feeling. It begins because with the vasodilation of the vessels, we have this engulfment of engorgement of blood and sensations to that injured area.
None.
Now there we're interesting.
Nociceptive pain. Nociceptive pain occurs as a result of the activation of the nociceptive system by noxious stimuli, inflammation, or disease. Nociceptive pain proceeds through 5 phases: transduction, conduction, transmission, perception, and modulation. Nociceptive pain originates in the nociceptors, which are highly specialized primary sensory neurons found primarily in the skin or joints or the walls of organs. These receptors convert noxious stimuli into electrical current through a process called transduction. The current is then conducted along the nociceptor axons to their cell bodies, located in the dorsal root ganglion in the spinal cord, and then to their central terminals located in the dorsal horn. Here, the electrical impulses initiate neurotransmitter release from nociceptor central terminals, which relay the signal across synapses to the dorsal horn neurons. Greater stimulus intensities are associated with the release of neuropeptides, including substance P, from central terminals of C fibers. Substance P, acting via neurokinin receptors located on dorsal horn neurons, generates a greater postsynaptic response and enhances the activity of NMDA receptors. The signal is then relayed via ascending nociceptive pathways to higher centers in the brain, where it is perceived as pain. Ascending nociceptive transmissions are modulated by inhibitory or facilitatory control systems in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord. The process of inhibition and facilitation is regulated by neurons projecting from the nucleus rate magnus in the lower brainstem. Nociceptive signals are transmitted through descending projections in the dorsal horn of the spinal cord.
That's what I'm trying to tell you, yeah.
Facilitation serves to provide warning of tissue injury and encourages protective behaviors, such as fight or flight responses, while inhibition may serve to provide analgesia at times of danger, so that pain does not compromise function.
Me too. Sorry.
Pain perception and the human brain. Part of the survival value of pain is its association with learning centers in the brain. The brain circuitry associated with nociceptive and neuropathic pain involves areas considered to be essential in emotional learning, memory, and reward. The insula and anterior cingulate, together with the thalamus and basal ganglion, are most consistently activated in acute pain. The brainstem and the descending pain modulatory system also play a role, where activity is observed in both the anticipation and perception of pain. Clinical chronic pain causes increased activation of prefrontal cortical regions, which implies that chronic pain distorts the cognitive and emotional perception and processing of everyday experiences. Hypervigilance and an impaired ability to extinguish aversive associations of fearful or painful events seems to involve interaction among medial prefrontal cortex, basal ganglion,